Ryan, you ready to go?
Yeah, rock and roll.
Uh-oh.
What's wrong?
It's dead.
You sure?
Yeah.
You know it's an automatic, right?
Yeah, I know. I wasn't born yesterday.
Okay, so then you know obviously you put your foot on the brake to start the thing and turn the ignition to get it going. You knew that.
On the brake.
You put your foot on the brake and turn it. I'm sure you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. Oh, ta-da!
I mean, how was I meant to know that?
Don't know. Do you think of reading the manual?
Manuals? Who reads manuals nowadays, man?
Yeah, I guess so. But you see, the point is, everything we learn from someone else. There's always a little bit of faith involved. Whether it's walking, talking, even science, there's a little bit of faith we have to learn from a teacher. We read a textbook. But when it comes to the really, really important questions in life, like who am I, why am I here, we think we can just do it on our own. Is that a good idea?
Ryan, man, this is too philosophical for me.
You're right, let's just go.
All right.
Once Sherlock Holmes and Watson went on a camping trip. In the middle of the night, as they were laying down next to each other, Sherlock turned to Watson and asked him, "What do you see?" As they both looked up, Watson said, "Seeing the stars astronomically, I can ascertain that there are probably millions of galaxies and billions of planets. As I look up at the stars astrologically, it seems to me as though Saturn is in Leo. Horologically, looking at the stars, I think it's probably about 3:15 in the morning. And meteorologically, looking at the stars, I get a sense that tomorrow will be a sunny day." As Watson looked at Sherlock, he asked Sherlock, "Well, what do you see?" Sherlock looked up and simply said, "I see that someone has stolen our tent." It's an interesting story because it depicts how in civilization sometimes we can analyze things to the nth limit, yet miss the most obvious truths. If we look at the world in all its design, in all its intricacy, in all its order and ecosystems, wouldn't it be natural to assume that there is some intelligence behind it? Even when we look internally, we seek higher connection. We seek to connect with something beyond the material. What do I mean by that? I'll give you an example. Some years ago, they did a study to find out how people relax. The top 4 answers: go on holiday, take intoxication, go to sleep, and watch TV. Now, if you look at each one of these things, aren't they all an escape from life? To relax, people basically are trying to escape from their real life. But when you go on holiday, you have to come back. When you take intoxication, after some time it wears off. If you go to sleep, at some point you have to wake up. And if you watch a TV or a movie, then eventually you have to come back to your real life again. So C.S. Lewis once said, "If I find within myself a desire which no experience of this world can fulfill, then I must conclude I was made of a different world." And therefore the presence of God is an internal yearning within each one of us to escape to a spiritual destination which brings us real fulfillment. As spirit souls, we have 3 main qualities. We're eternal, full of knowledge, and full of happiness. And those qualities are derived from God. And when we connect with God, then in connection with God, we can experience those 3 qualities in their fullest capacity. The soul and God are in quantity different, but in quality the same. Just as you have an ocean and you have a drop, the same in quality, but different in quantity. Just as you have a fire and a spark, the same in quality but different in quantity. Similarly, God and the soul, the same in quality but different in quantity. Yet when that connection is made, we actually satisfy the heart's yearning and find true peace and happiness. Some people think of God as a creation of the power-hungry elite used to control the masses and keep everyone in line. Some think of God as a strict and unforgiving judge. Some think of God as just an imaginary being that helps people find peace. Some people think God is just a crutch for the weak. And for some people, God is a cosmic order supplier, a convenient port of call in times of need and want. The Vedic conception of God is much deeper, much more profound, and much more sweeter. God is not just a controller, God is not just a fatherly figure, God is not just one who provides for us, but God is actually our best friend. And what God is actually looking for is a loving relationship with each and every soul. It was Friedrich Nietzsche who said, "I would only believe in a God who knows how to dance." And the Bhagavad Gita explains that God is that joyful, affectionate, loving, sweet dancer who each and every soul can have a relationship with. As souls, we have three main qualities. In Sanskrit, Sat means eternal, Chit means sentience, and Ananda means full of bliss. As souls, we have these qualities, and these qualities are actually coming from God. And when we as souls connect to God and re-establish that loving connection, then we experience our eternity, our true sentient nature, and our incredible feeling of happiness and bliss within us in connection with that Supreme Soul. The soul and God are intimately connected. In fact, the soul is part of God. It's important also to understand that different people approach God with a different mood. On the most elementary level, people approach God out of fear. A little higher than that is they worship God for a sense of personal benefit. A little higher than that is they approach God out of a feeling of duty. But the highest connection with God is not to connect with God out of fear, not to connect with God because we want something, not to connect to God just simply because of a feeling of duty. But the highest connection with God is to connect out of a feeling of genuine love. And it is that love that God is seeking, and it is that love that we seek. And when we connect with God, then that love is experienced in its deepest sense. When we try to perceive God through the means of our own senses, we hit certain problems. The first problem is the senses are operationally inadequate. In other words, the senses, what to speak of perceiving spiritual phenomena, can't even perceive so many material phenomena. The senses are inherently limited. But not only are the senses operationally inadequate, but they're also ontologically inadequate. How can we perceive spiritual phenomena through material paraphernalia? It's as ludicrous as saying that we want to try to measure temperature by using a set of scales. The Bhagavad Gita explains that God can indeed be seen. God can be perceived. But in order to do that, we need to use a higher dimensional methodology. But before I come to that, there's something else which is required. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, who founded the Hare Krishna movement, was once giving a lecture in a temple. As he spoke on the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, a member of the audience stood up and questioned him, "Have you seen God?" He looked the person straight in the eyes and said, "Yes, I have seen God." "Have you seen God?" In pin-drop silence, the audience looked at this person who had stood up. And the person replied back, "No, I haven't seen God." Bhaktivedanta Swami then looked straight back at this person and with a penetrating look asked them, "Do you want to see God?" And as everyone looked at this person, that person began to do some deep introspection and finally began shaking their head, saying, "No, I don't want to see God." And the Swami then replied, "Therefore, you cannot see God." In other words, the first step in seeing God is to have a desire to see God. And when one has that desire, and then one takes on the spiritual science prescribed in the Bhagavad Gita, then one can actually get that direct perception. The Bhagavad Gita is not a religion. The Bhagavad Gita is not a theological process which is simply meant to make you believe in God, but it's meant to equip you with the tools and processes by which you can perceive God's presence at every moment. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita prescribes a hypothesis, an experiment, and then a conclusion and observation. And by going through these steps, one can actually establish a very real, a very tangible, and a direct connection with God.